Welcome back, welcome back. So, this is episode 6, the pitfalls of romanticism. We've just covered the idea of game and play within our social settings, and we've also explored that experiment that helped us understand that rats actually laugh, and beyond that, rats participate in a game of life, in a series of games whereby if the bigger rat conquers the smaller rat 100% of the time, the smaller rat will not invite the bigger rat for a game, a wrestling match, another wrestling match, and they will both isolate and they will both die. So it's fundamentally important. It's to our survival. That is the level of importance that the interaction that we have in a social setting is important to us. It actually determines not only the quality of our lives, but the longevity of it as well. So now let's get into dynastic marriages. This will be our introduction to romanticism. And honestly, guys, I don't think we're going to cover this in one episode. I'm sorry to say this. I'm sorry to say this. There's so much about romanticism and romance that I don't think we'll be able to cover in one episode. So what you're going to do is we're going to cover today the introduction to romance and romanticism and the idea of getting the one. And then in the coming episode where we're going to be talking about relationships again, we're going to talk about now sustaining that relationship and what we need to know when we're in that relationship setting. Guys, it's very important for me to note this disclaimer. I am single. I've given this information as a single person. And so please don't judge too harshly. And also maybe try to see what would make sense for you and just draw it into your relationship if that applies. So I'm speaking to a lot of single people out there. I'm shouting to you. I'm also speaking very softly to people in relationships to help them see and gain awareness about this idea of romance and romanticism and how they can be able to just fine-tune it for the sake of their long-term relationship. So let's start with dynastic marriages. The idea of romanticism started in the mid to late 1800s. Just in case you didn't know that, yes. So we as human beings have evolved and existed in the world. I love giving this information because it helps you get a map. Get a map of how recent these things are, right? So as human beings, we have evolved and existed on this planet here, Earth, for over 3.5 billion, with a B, billion years. So we have lived in the water, we have lived on land, we have lived in the trees, we have lived in caves. Now we live in our beautiful concrete cities for the majority of the people. So then when did this idea of romanticism start? Because the interesting thing is, for the longest period, I'm talking about 3.5 billion years up until just last year, okay, not last year literally, but a few centuries ago, which is the 19th century? Yeah, 19th century, which is the 1800s. So the interesting thing is, before the 19th century, then how did people used to relate? Because the essence that we are here today, the fact that we are here today as human beings, means that people have been having sex since the beginning of time. Human beings have been procreating since the beginning of time. So what was that evolution of that relationship between two human beings that were able to procreate? What was the setup that was eventually built to enable that procreation to happen in a more seamless way and in a more fruitful way? So what we were able to come up with as human beings was the setup of marriage, right? And the idea of marriage before the 19th century was that marriages were determined by elders in society, maybe your parents, and it was a very logical setup. So if you are of that marrying age, what would happen is your elders or your parents would join you up with someone else, and they would go through a very logical process of setting up what we used to call a dynastic marriage. So maybe you have a goat, someone else has a sheep, now you two can be one. Maybe they have a piece of land that is next to your piece of land, you two are put together, now you have one bigger piece of land. Maybe they are a princess in their kingdom and you are a prince in your kingdom. Now you're united and those two kingdoms are one. So there was a very logical way in which our elders and our parents and our the leaders within the societal setting were able to mix and match different people into a marriage setup, and those marriages resulted in dynastic marriages. Up until the 19th century. So what happened in the 19th century that was so profound that brought about the idea of romance? In the 19th century, there was a decline in religion. What I mean by that is, as our scientific information and awareness grew, we arrived at a point whereby some of the information that we were getting within our religious setting did not make a lot of scientific sense. So we are not quite sure whether the stories that happened, for example, in the Bible actually happened or didn't happen. We can't place scientific meaning to certain things that actually are attributed within the Bible. Like, how do you part a sea? Explain to me how that is scientifically possible, right? So I'm not negating the stories that are within the Bible. I'm not negating the religious constructs. What I'm just saying is there was to come a time when society was no longer as keen on religion as they used to be in the olden days, right? And that was brought about by scientific evolution and revolution. So the more we learned about sciences, the laws of physics and all that, we sort of digressed from that religious path, right? And so in the 19th century is when that was really felt. There was that friction and people started asking themselves, if we are going to derail ourselves, or if we are going to stray away from religion, then what is going to give us as human beings that comfort, that serenity, that awakening and peace that religion, for example, used to give us? And most people came to the understanding or to the conclusion that we are moving into an age where what was given and what was offered, the solace, the comfort, the compassion that was given by religion and the understanding that was driven by religion is now going to be driven by something else. And this is going to be culture, right? And the culture that we are going to indulge in is what is going to elevate us to the next level, is what is going to fill up for what religion used to fill within us now that we are moving away from it. And so we started setting up so many institutes and courses on the arts. We started looking at, let's say, poetry, the poems of Akina Shakespeare and all those renowned poets. We're trying to see how this particular poetry will give us meaning, will give our lives meaning, will give our lives solace and comfort, and what religion used to give us that now we no longer get from it. And so that is why within the 19th century, there was a very big boom in the arts, I want to say department or field. Yeah, so there's a very big boom in the arts because we started to understand that maybe it's this arts that is going to inform it's going to give us what religion used to give us. And now we're going to be whole thanks to the arts, right? And so there was a big diversification of the arts. And one of the things that we came to learn, one of the things that was born out of that art, out of artists, out of poets, out of novelists in the 19th century, is the idea that you need to be happy within a marriage. And that correlates very closely to the idea of being in a job that is paying you well and is fulfilling for you. Those two particular beliefs have given us a lot of headache. And they've also changed the era that we live in today. So we've moved from the era of dynastic marriages, the the time of agrarian revolution, the time of the agrarian culture, I would say that, where we lived in communities, we did different tasks simultaneously. So you'd have farmers on one side, you'd have maybe councilmen on another side. That is how we used to live in the agrarian age. Now we're in the industrial age. We're living in the cities. We are so individual in how we approach life. And not only that, but we are also engaging life with new expectations. We're engaging love and romance, for example, with the idea that I need to be in a marriage. I need to be in a marriage with someone who gets me, who I can be completely honest with. And not only that, but this marriage has to be filled with love and filled with happiness from start to finish over 50 years with one person. They have to give me everything that I need as a human being. And when I find this person, everything that I feel as confusion, everything that I feel as loneliness, everything that I feel as disruption brought about by isolation is going to be is going to be cancelled. It's going to finish, right? And then this brings us to some of those ideas of romanticism, just as we introduce this particular philosophy. Let me call it a philosophy because, man, yeah. So this particular idea and philosophy of romance and romanticism. So romance in itself is quite an interesting thing that was brought about in terms of time between mid 1800s to late 1800s. So it's just something we've learned the other day, right? But just the idea that we have now been born in such a liberal time and generation makes us think that this is how life has been from the start, from the onset. But 3.5 billion years ago, no one was talking about love. No one was thinking about love 1 million years ago. It wasn't there. It was just like, yeah, so you have a goat, you have a sheep, you two are one. Next year we'll have a family of goats and a family of sheep and a family of human beings. Oh God, that sounded so wrong. Anyway, yeah, so you now see the shift, that the shift from the agrarian age, the shift to industrial age, and in itself the shift into romance is something that we've learned for a very short period of time, if we are comparing to the time that we've actually existed and interacted with each other. So not only that, but we are also coming to learn a lot about love and the idea of love from very many tenets, but there's a primal area where we get the structure of love, the foundation of love, right? But before we get into that, we need to understand the idea of romance. So the idea of romance dictates that, number one, there's going to be a soulmate for everyone. There is a soulmate for everyone. So we are going to unpack all these beliefs of romanticism so that we get to the flesh of it. But essentially, one of the beliefs of romanticism is there is a soulmate for everyone. Another belief of romanticism is the idea of happy ever after. Happy ever after. We're going to get that, I'm going to get that girl, we're going to get married, we're going to have a special feeling. Okay, the special feeling comes before the marriage. So I'm going to see that girl, I'm going to get a special feeling, a unique feeling I can't explain, and then that is now love. That is what is regarded to as love. And then now we're going to get into a marriage, and then happily ever after we live. So that is the second belief within romanticism. The third belief within romanticism, or the third concept of romanticism, is basically from where we learn about romance. So just to segue a little bit before we continue the beliefs of romanticism, where do we learn about love? That is the other question. Where do we learn about love? In this modern age, we are also living in the era of modernity. In this modern age, we learn about love from different points of view, or from different sources. One of the sources, novels. What we learn about love in novels, we just capture that, right? So there's novels, there's films, there are songs and music that we listen to. We also have art. So there are different tenets where we get our information about love, right? But something very interesting for us to note, and it's something that was noted by was it Sigmund Freud, which is also the core learning in any psychotherapeutic setting. The core foundation in psychotherapy is that how we approach love as adults comes from our understanding, what we learned about love from our caregivers. So that in itself, let's just put a pin on that, right? Let's just put a pin on that. Let's put it somewhere, a pin on it, right? We'll come back to it. So belief number 3, the idea that in romanticism, that romantics don't have a job particularly. I think we've gotten a lot of that from where we learn about love. Where we learn about love from films, where we learn about love from songs, where we learn about love from novels and poetry. If you come to think about it, it's like these guys never have jobs. You just like, you get so much time to invest in your romantic relationship. Where does this time come from? So you have times to go for walks in forests. You have time to go for walks on beaches and where the large bodies of water meet the land in big cliffs and drastically high cliffs. That is where there's romance, and that is what romantics tend to be doing most of the time. Think about something like, I love this new film that will really give us perspective within this particular episode, and this film is on Netflix called Bridgerton. So Bridgerton talks about a familial setting within the year, I think 1816, around there, 1860. So before, as people are now moving into that idea of romance and romanticism, is when this particular film, quote unquote, was made, or was made to emulate. So it's quite interesting for you now to learn from that, how you spend so much time. These people, it's like they don't have jobs. They don't have a 9-to-5. Romantics, watch Cinderella, watch all those fairy tales we watch from Disney about people falling in love. Snow White, does she have a job? Does she? She's just sleeping. Right? So essentially, there is this idea that in romanticism that these people don't particularly have a job. They have a lot of time to spend investing in their relationship. The other belief of romanticism that has really captured us in this day and age is the idea that sex is the crowning expression of love. Sex is the crowning expression. My Kikuyu people, please, my Kikuyu ancestors, why are you doing this to me? So sex is the crowning expression of love. Yani, sex is that thing. It's the epitome of love. It's the epic expression of love. And that in itself has also brought another belief, which is that adultery is a tragedy. We're going to look at all these particular beliefs. We're going to unpack them starting now. So the first belief that that every single person has a soulmate. That's a very interesting concept. So what we tend to think and how we tend to approach love and romanticism is from the idea that I have a soulmate. There's someone out there that is made for me. There's someone out there that they're just waiting. They were made, they were programmed, they were built by whatever gods or whatever god, and they're just here. They're here. They're just waiting for me. All that has to happen is for me to find them. There's a soulmate somewhere. Yeah, there's a soulmate somewhere for everyone. For everyone, one particular person for everyone. There's a soulmate out of 7 point whatever billion people. There's one person for me out of 7.9 billion people. One person for moi, a soulmate. Now, how do we come about finding this particular soulmate? This is the most interesting thing. So we come about finding this soulmate through instinct. So you might be sitting somewhere in a restaurant, just minding your own business, and then you see someone going to the cashier or someone walking in, and you're like, oh my God, look at their cheeks, or look at their eyes, or look at their nose, or look at their ankles, or look at their hips, or look at their whatever. You just see something about them, a random physical attribute, and you sort of feel some special feeling, you know, and it's so widespread, I would say, this idea of a special feeling, that you don't even have to explain it. You would go to your people, you'd go to your folks, you'd go to your family and tell them, I have met someone, we met on a train, we met somewhere, we met in a conference, we met in a restaurant somewhere, we met at an event, and I just had a special feeling that it's like there's like a chill, there's like a ice cube that has been put in your heart, and just whew. You get a certain chill and then butterflies in your tummy, right? So there's a special feeling that is attributed to this person. So how are you going to find this person? You're not going to find this person through arranged marriages by your elders or your parents or people within your circle. No. What is going to happen is you're going to find this person randomly through instinct. You're just going to see someone, and it's going to be maybe the curvature of their cheek, or their beard, or maybe the way their thighs look, or maybe how their face looks, or how their eyes glow or sparkle, and you're just going to be like, it's you. It's you. I feel a special feeling. Let's go see the parents. Right? And even when you're going to your parents and you explain to them that I found this person and I really had a special feeling. Yeah, we were at the airport and we were just waiting for the plane, and I just saw her, and yeah, my heart skipped a beat. Oh my God, haven't we had that in novels and films and songs? And that is where we learn about love, remember? So you get this special feeling, you get to indulge with this person, and you get to decide that this is the person for you, this is your soulmate. So it's quite interesting, this special feeling, and you can't particularly control where you're going to have this special feeling. So it might be at the swimming pool, it might be at the park, it might be on the road when you're going to work, it might be at work, it might be during work at a conference, it might be at an event, it might be when you're meeting a friend and they've decided to bring a friend along. So you never know when this special feeling is going to come, and you never know when you're going to get this instinct and you're going to find this person. But we all believe that there's a soulmate, and there's a special feeling that I'm supposed to feel when I find this person. And if I don't feel it, then there's something wrong with me. And in fact, we get to a point where people actually fake. People fake the special feeling, because you're like, oh my God, I know this person feels this way about me. Maybe I don't feel that way about them, but I'll just lie that I feel that way, just so that we can get this going, right? And now that drives us to the second misconception about romanticism, and that is the idea of happily ever after. The idea of happily ever after. So how I'm going to go about giving this particular beliefs is I'm going to unpack a belief, and then in the final section of this particular episode, I'm going to give some pointers on what you can be able to do in order to improve our performance within long-term relationships in accordance to these beliefs that we've actually discussed. Sounds good? Fantastic. So let's go to the second belief. The second belief is that there's going to be a happily ever after. We're going to get married, we're going to go on our honeymoon, and we'll walk into the sunset. And there's nothing that is going, then it's going to be life living on the cloud. It's going to be life on the cloud for 50 years with this person. We're never going to argue, we're never going to fight, we're never going to feel hate or disgust or any sort of resentment towards this person. We're always going to feel in love, we're always going to love this person, and we're always going to have a happy time up until the end of time, right? Wrong. So yes, as much as there's this idea of happy ever after, have you ever noticed how this particular romantic people tend to die young? They tend to die young. So something comes up, and it's quite convenient for them if it's happily ever after and they die young, because you're not doing 50 forever with this person. You're just going to do like 5 and then you so what usually happens within the novels and the films is that, okay, so you're going to find this really nice person, you're going to really like them from the onset, there's that special feeling, you're going to get to know each other, the special feeling grows, and then now you get into a marriage setting, and then a few days after the marriage, a few days after the honeymoon, or they cough, they have a little bit of, let's say, tuberculosis, and then they die. So it's quite convenient for them that they're dying that quick, because there are a lot of challenges that are within relationships that we don't get to discuss, we don't get to cover, that is not covered within our idea when you're learning about love, within novels, within films and all that. We're learning about love from a very perfectionist point of view. When you watch Cinderella, when you watch all these amazing Disney movies, which is where most of us learned about love, even from an early age, there's no one talking about, oh, so the prince and the princess lost their baby. The prince and the princess need to take a mortgage. The prince and the princess need to deal with taxes. The prince and the princess now, let's say one of them has a terminal illness. So essentially what happens is the romantics will embody the idea of a happily ever after, and most often than not, they'll die young. They'll die young for one reason or another, right? So think about Romeo and Juliet, the epitome of romance. They died young, didn't they? It was happily ever after, but they died young. So that in itself is not a true depiction of life in the majority of cases, to say the least. Now, let's move on to the next particular belief. The belief that generally none of these romantics have a job. When you think about where you learned about love and you look at these characters that were engaging in that idea of building a romantic relationship, how involved were they in a job? How involved were they in a particular activity that, let's say, gave them income, right? So in today's age, we live in a world where, a very capitalistic world, to say the least, and also a world where many people, if not a majority of them, have jobs. So you have something that you're doing that is keeping you active every single day, day to day. You don't have time to go for those walks on beaches. Okay, maybe once in a year when you're going on vacation and something of that sort. But it's not something that you do daily. You don't go to walk in the forest with your loved one daily. You don't go to watch the sunset with your loved one daily. You don't just sit somewhere and just enjoy the sunrise daily. You don't go to walk on the beach daily. You don't go to enjoy those very high cliffs daily. You don't. It doesn't happen daily, right? Because you have something that is, you have a job. You have a job to do. You have obligations. You have obligations to do, right? Or to fulfill. So essentially, this idea of you have all the time in the world to invest in your relationship and in your love life, it's not particularly realistic, because in this day and age we have so many other things that we are doing that it doesn't make sense to think and to feel and to expect that within your romantic relationship all you're going to be doing is giving love and growing that romantic relationship 24/7. In fact, it will actually be kind of boring if that is all you do all day every day, right? You just get to like 5-10 years and you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm tired, I want to do something else. I would tend to assume. So that is the third particular belief within romanticism that we've been able to unpack. Now the fourth one is very heavy. Whew. This one is particularly heavy. And this one is that sex is the crowning expression of love. So within the given period of romanticism, within this era of romanticism, we have moved from seeing sex as something that we do for procreation to something that is the ultimate expression of love, right? And that in itself has its advantages as well as disadvantages. So let's just be very mindful of that. So beginning with the idea of sex, before the idea of romance came to play. What used to happen is, again, adultery has existed for as long as we've been having sex, right? So you tend to think that the idea of adultery is today such a tragic sin. It's a tragedy when someone cheats on you, or when someone has sex with someone else who is not part of your romantic relationship. Because if I am having a partner and this partner goes and has sexual intercourse with someone else, and I see sex as the crowning expression of love, then I feel betrayed. I feel betrayed because why would you go give my love to someone else, right? There's a sense of entitlement there, but in essence, that is what you're trying to unpack. We're trying to unpack the idea that now that you're seeing sex as the crowning expression of love, then it becomes the biggest betrayal when someone breaks the rules that you have within your romantic relationship and goes to have sexual intercourse with someone else. Get? So that in itself was brought about this idea of romanticism, whereby you're supposed to be in a loving romantic relationship and you're supposed to be happy. If you're not happy within your marriage, there's something wrong. If you're not happy within your long-term romantic relationship, there's something that is wrong. You're supposed to be happy 24/7. But in real sense, even before the industrial age, what used to happen is so you'd be married to someone through your dynastic marriage setting. So this is not someone that you would from the onset love or have that special feeling about, right? So this is someone you've just been told, oh, so there's this girl from across the street, yeah, we've organized for you to marry her, she's going to be your new wife. Or there's this guy from across the street, we've organized for you to marry him, and yeah, he's going to be your husband from now henceforth, right? And there was no particular judgment that said that, okay, so you're supposed to be happy within this particular marriage. There was no rule that said that, right? So what used to happen in some cases, I don't know, I don't say most, and I seem like I'm advocating for adultery. I'm not. I'm just trying to see what used to happen in the past and to try to unpack that. So in the past, then, what used to happen is you would find that, yes, I have a wife who we have a very logical marriage with. The marriage is an economic structure. You get to give me a family and to continue my lineage, and I get to get someone who affirms me at a certain position in my societal setting. So this person maybe gives me a home, this person gives me income, this person gives me ABCD, and as well I give this person a family, I give them a continuation to their lineage, I also give them maybe respect and honor within the society that we are in. So it was a very economical equation, or a very economical agreement, right? But what used to happen is then you would find that the people within that marriage have what you call in today's age clan days. You have someone on the side who now gives you that sex that makes you happy, that sex that makes you feel fulfilled and all that. And then now you have the marriage where you're now having sex for the essence of getting kids, and yeah, because it's what you're supposed to do in a marriage and all that thing. But what happened now within romance is now the role that the clan day was supposed to fill and the role that your wife was supposed to fill have now been merged into one. And now it means that your wife is supposed to be your accountant. I'm using wife because I'm a guy, but it can go either way. So your partner now fits into so many roles in one. Your partner is who you go to for comfort. Your partner is who you go to for advice. Your partner is now your accountant. Your partner is your tax person. Your partner is your income generator. Your partner is someone who gives you love, someone who gives you happiness, someone who gives you intrigue at the same time they're supposed to give you what is it called? They're supposed to give you continuity and that comfort of everyday continuity, right? So there are so many things that used to be filled, roles that used to be filled by a community that have now been bundled into one partner. And some of these roles include the idea that I'm supposed to have fulfilling sex with you, I'm supposed to feel love, and I'm supposed to feel happiness 24/7, right? So then, before Romanticism, the idea of adultery was not as harsh as it is today. Sorry about that. The idea of Romanticism is not as harsh as it used to be. Sorry, let me just, yeah. So the idea of adultery was not as harsh as it used to be. Actually, in today's age, the idea of adultery is so harsh that there's a term that was created for that, and that is the term tragedy, right? So tragedy is something that happens that is so monumental in your life that it drives you to either want to end your life, or something that is going to result in decisions that do not favor the quality of your life. I know I'm sort of confusing you a little bit, but yeah, so go and look at the history of the word tragedy. Tragedy in itself was birthed from this point when romance was also birthed, because adultery was considered the highest tragedy, the highest treason within a romantic relationship. And the reason why it was regarded that way is because sex had been given a higher power. Sex had been given a higher expectation. And so what changed within the adultery scene is not that it was not happening, now it's happening. It's that it has always been happening, but now the weight that has been put upon it is much heavier, right? So that in itself is then the idea of adultery within sex, within romanticism. So now we've come to almost towards the tail end of this particular conversation. And at this juncture, we're going to see then, now that we've sort of unpacked some of these beliefs within romanticism, and we've seen how some of them don't hold water, to say the least. So then how can we reprogram ourselves in order to ensure that either we get a better chance at entering or getting into a long-term romantic relationship, or maintaining the long-term relationship that you're in, or even improving the quality of the long-term relationship that you're in. So let's begin with the first belief, or the first solution. So the first solution of getting into a long-term romantic relationship and for tackling romance is, number one, seeing ourselves as flawed beings. Seeing ourselves as flawed beings. So one thing that was really brought about by the idea of romanticism is the idea that now we have pulled perfectionism into our relationships, and we have identified ourselves as perfect, and we've identified our partners as perfect. And even something as trivial as the idea of an angel has now been brought down from heavens and now has been attached to our partner. So our partner is, we've heard it so many times in songs, in films, in novels, where someone calls their partner angel, right? You're perfect, you're everything that I want, you're the epitome of perfection, right? But the very cringy thing about perfectionism and attributing that to our partners and to ourselves is the idea that we get to be so what is the word? Self-righteous. Yes, we get to be so self-righteous. So imagine a date between two people. Imagine this scenario within a date. So two people sit down and they're like, oh, so hi, how are you? Fine, thank you. Yeah, so I'm so-and-so, and my life is pretty much perfect, and I'm a pretty much perfect person as well. And yeah, I'm showing up today because, yeah, I'm expecting a perfect person from you. And on the other side of the table, the other person is also like, yeah, so I'm also perfect. My job is perfect. Everything is well. Everything is good. I'm doing well. My health is perfect. My fitness is perfect. My financials are perfect. Everything about me is perfect. Imagine how insufferable that particular conversation would be. Like, it would be so... I feel like it would be so heavy just to sit in that particular setting, because it would just make you cringe at how self-righteous these two people are, right? as compared to another date scenario where now two people sit across from each other and one person says, okay, so to be honest with you, I'm really having a challenge, let's say, interacting with people, and this is coming from point A, B, C, D, so this is how I'm crazy. And the other person says, okay, so for me, I have a challenge in trusting people because I've had this experience and so and so and so, and so I have trust issues, and this is how I'm crazy. I think that would be a more solid point of interaction, and even getting to build a foundation with this person, as compared to now assuming that everything is perfect about you and about the other person that you expect. So it's very interesting, and it's very important for us to see ourselves as flawed beings, as flawed creatures, as people who are insufferable to be around. And that in itself brings not only awareness to our own limitations as human beings, but it also gives us the capacity to give other people grace. Give other people grace whenever they fall short of something, whenever they are not perfect, whenever they are not, they do not meet our expectations. We'll still give them the grace, because you're like, oh, I'm a flawed human being, I'm a sinful being, which is something that was sort of within the Christianity realm, or within that proclivity, something that was really highlighted, that we are sinful beings, we are flawed beings. In all of us, I think it's St. Augustine who said that in all of us, we all bear the original sin of Adam, and so we are sinful beings by nature, and we are flawed beings by nature. And that in itself might sound so harsh to take in, but in itself it gives us the grace to be empathetic with ourselves when we fall short, and to be empathetic with other people when they fall short. And since we are human